Great to see everyone tonight, and go ahead and find a seat. If you haven't had a chance to find a seat, I'll see if I can project as loudly as possible. My hearing's not the best, and so sometimes I can't even tell if I'm loud or not. So if I'm screaming at you, I'm sorry. You'll let me know right here. The first thing I want to do is just thank you for coming out tonight. Si ustedes hablan español, gracias por venir esta noche. I'm very happy that you all came tonight. Not asking everyone to agree with what we talk about tonight. There's going to be lots of chance to interact, which I think is super important. I'll start with, right across the way, we have the seal of biliteracy tonight. Some of you might know that. You graduate. Some of you may have had kids that graduate with the seal of biliteracy. These are students that can demonstrate that they can speak more than one language, and they head out into a world that really requires it doesn't require, but certainly values being able to speak more than one language. So I'll start with a quote from one of our students, Michelle Salvidar, I was just over there speaking with a bunch of students, and she said, "The seal of biliteracy has shown the value of who I am and what I bring to this community." And so it's just a beautiful comment from her. So I'm going to talk a little bit, just briefly about me. Some of you know who I am. I'm going to try to make it quick. Then I'm going to talk about what I think is going on in the world at large, what I think the implications are for schooling here, and what I think we need to do. My job is just for the first 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, I'll be turning it over to our team, who's going to give you a chance to interact in a variety of ways, and it's great to see so many people. So first of all, a little bit about me. If you don't know, I'm on my 29th year in education. I started as a bilingual Spanish teacher in Los Angeles, 1993. I spent time there. I went to graduate school in the Bay Area, studied administration and policy. I worked in New York City as a national teacher recruiter. I came back to the Bay Area. I was a principal there and a teacher there. And I spent the last 20 years in Washington State working as a principal, assistant superintendent, associate superintendent, director of a nonprofit, executive director of a nonprofit, taught at the University of Washington for 6-7 years, mentored aspiring principals, and spent a lot of time traveling the country and learning about what are the global trends and what do those things mean for education. I just came here, as a lot of you know, in July. I spent most of this year trying to understand who is Summit County, what are the beautiful things that exist in this district, what matters to the community. That's an interesting question because various pieces of the community value different things. And so how do I, as a superintendent, try to recognize those different hopes and dreams and try to pull those pieces together? And it's complicated, very complicated work. I want you to know that I really cherish being here. I know that I'm the fourth superintendent in the last 4 years. I made a public commitment in my interview to stay 10 years. You know, that some people will like that, some people won't. Every superintendent has their own interests. But I would say I'm very excited to go deep with this community. I think the community deserves long-term leadership, and I think the amazing students and families of this community need that as well. So that's a little bit about me. In addition to just saying, I have 2 daughters who are 19 and 22. My youngest is a sophomore at UC Santa Barbara studying environmental science, and she's an ambassador there for environmental issues. And then my oldest is graduating from Macalester in 10 days, and with a degree in neuroscience and a minor in chemistry and a minor in biology and global health. So I've had if some of you have had college kids in your family, probably, we all went to college or went to school, high school, and have learned a lot. I've had the experience of having my kids in there right now and understanding what are some of the demands in those positions. And I'm married to Cherry Bird, and I have been for the last 23 years. My wife's Thai Chinese. She's from LA, so my kids identify as multiracial. And so that has been a really great learning for me in life. So in terms of the world at large and what I think is happening, I don't have all the answers to this, but I'll tell you what I think is happening, and I'll offer it to you to get into these conversations. One is it's a largely interdependent world. So if you take an example in an international world, take, for example, I lived about 10 minutes from the Boeing plant in Everett, Washington. And I would routinely see very large planes fly in, larger than any 747, with a large dome on it, And inside that dome was a wing or different parts of the plane. So we toured the Boeing plant where they put the 747, 787 together, and 767 in that plant. And they shared with us that those parts and pieces are coming from all over the world. And I asked the question, so what do you need in students that graduate from our schools? I was in the Everett Public Schools. We said we need your students to be great readers and writers and mathematicians, but we want to be really clear, it's not enough. They need to be incredibly good at collaborating with people. They have to be able to work across lines of difference because we work all over the world. And they have to be able to ask big questions and work in complicated environments. If they can't do that, we probably won't hire them. And that was from somebody very high up in Boeing. I heard the same thing throughout Seattle the whole time I was there from high-level business leaders. So the world is interdependent. Information is ubiquitous. I know you know these things, but it's leading to a place. It's there every second. If you're like me or if you're like my kids, it's very hard for me to put the phone down and not look at it. It's hard for me to not look for something that will affirm what I believe. Like, oh, look at that. They believe, okay, great. I agree with them too. Very hard. And our students are getting information every second, and it's very hard for them to make sense of that information. And that's a big role that we have to play in our schools. Lastly, as you know, we have large-scale issues to address across the world. I'm not advocating for one side or the other of these issues. I'm saying they're complicated issues. For example, climate change. That's a very, very complicated issue in some respects. The wealth gap, the divided nation. I could go on and on of the big, big time complicated topics in this country. And I'm very, very proud of our students because when I sit with them and talk with them, which is rather frequently, they see that. If you came to the MYP here at the high school, there were endless presentations here about the complicated nature of the world and what they're going to be facing. And so they see that. What I think that means for schools is schools largely were designed for the industrial era. They were designed in a time when it was about, okay, cover this content. If you're good at this, we'll put you here. If you're not good, we'll put you here. If you're really not good, we'll put you over here. If you're really advanced, we'll put you over here. And schools largely haven't changed all that much, but the world has changed dramatically. And so I think that that's something we have to pay a lot of attention to. Again, I think students need to be great readers, writers, and mathematicians, but I'm going to say again, I don't believe that's actually enough. I think we need to get great at those three things, and we need to create those environments in our schools. So actually, you all said this long before I got here. When you did the strategic planning process, some of you were involved in that, and then the students helped create these 5 big ideas, which are that they need to be curious. This is a graduate profile. Curious, courageous, prepared, globally aware, and growth-oriented when our students leave. And before we go any further, I'd like to ask somebody, I'll pick on someone I know first. Let's see, Anne Mary. Grab this. And can you read for the crowd? If you don't know Anne Mary, she's our principal at Breck. Let's give her a big hand. That's a hard job over there. So again, I'm going to ask you to read that in a second, but this is not coming from me. This is coming from the students of this county and many of the community members when the strategic plan was put together. And what I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about is not something that's totally different, but how to get to that end. So can you read Courageous? Thank you. Who would like to pick up Curious? Patty, thank you.
Ask questions, think critically, and solve problems using a variety of strategies.
Thank you very much. Globally aware.
Sure.
Thank you.
Participate in local and global communities, embrace different cultures, welcome the perspectives of others, and communicate effectively across lines of difference.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll be diving into 2 of these tonight. Prepared. Thank you.
Prepared are academically prepared, socially and emotionally intelligent, and financially ready.
Thank you. And then lastly, growth-oriented.
And open
responsibilities, adapt in changing circumstances, and pursue passions.
What I've seen, and to be honest, from my worldview prior to being here and also being here, is students are very excited when they're engaged in content that gets them to think critically and work across lines of difference and ask hard questions and be engaged in projects. And a lot of that's embedded here. And tonight we'll dive more deeply into prepared and growth-oriented. So what I would say is there's complex challenges that are going to require all of us, I do it every day, you probably do too, to figure out how to collaboratively problem solve, address complex issues, ask those critical questions. So I'm offering 3 things for tonight for us to consider moving forward. And one is that we need to understand the implications of all of these global changes and what they mean for school. One part of that, which may pop up in your group conversations, is the impact of artificial intelligence on learning. And how do we embrace that change? Because that change is here and it's not going away. So that's exactly one big topic we need to pay attention to. I think we also need, and you said this yourselves, not just me, to provide more opportunities for students to explore and have choice beyond the classroom walls. Internships, externships, apprenticeships, be engaged beyond the school environment. And lastly, unless you're really involved in school every day, this might not be the most obvious thing, but is to design learning environments that will support the path to the graduate profile. I am sure if you think back on your own life, you can think of times in school where you were deeply engaged and that made you want to come to school. And that's the kind of environment that we need to have. We have a lot of students here and all over the country that are saying they don't want to come to school. And we have a very important job to do, which is to adjust what we do to make it a more exciting, engaging place for students to be ready for the future. And so for today and the future, frankly. So what I'm going to do next is turn it over to Peter. And Peter is going to introduce you all to the process tonight and the people that are going to help us out.